everyone, and welcome to the Metuchen High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS. I'm Kalegi, joined by Josh Hyman, Sarah Terracina, and we're also joined by Superintendent Dr. Caputo today. It'll be a great show as we're back today. But before we get to Dr. Caputo, I want to talk to Josh and Sarah first, because it's been 2 weeks since we did that show right at the beginning of distance learning, and now week 3, we've gotten some more experience with it. So I'll start with Sarah. How have you been adjusting to getting a routine started here during distance learning?
I think I've actually done a pretty good job of getting a routine down. I started to actually use my planner and stick to my schedule a little bit better so that I have time to go outside with my family on walks and things. So I think I've been getting the knack of it for sure.
How about you, Josh?
Yeah, the same. It was a bit weird at first to do it, but now I've kind of fallen into a rhythm of get up at this time, do this, then this, and just, making sure I can get all my assignments done. I've pretty much figured out how my teachers are doing it and how they're posting their assignments. So all in all, I think I've gotten used to it now, so it's not as bad as it was a few weeks ago when we started.
Yeah, absolutely. So we got someone really good to talk to about this. We got Dr. Caputo, superintendent here. And the first thing I wanted to talk about is just the exceptional job that teachers are doing throughout the district, because this is something new for everyone. This isn't just new for the students. This is new for all the teachers, having to completely reshape their lesson plans and basically everything they do, and really drop everything and just try to do new things and make things work with the situation at hand. And obviously it was a lot of work from the district itself. So the first thing I wanted to ask you, Dr. Caputo, we closed schools right around March 13th, which was about a week before Governor Murphy really shut them down for the whole state. So talk about the decision-making in doing that and being proactive and getting distance learning really set and started.
So thanks for having me, Artie, Eddie, and Josh and Sarah. Nice to see you guys, too. So, Eddie, yeah, we closed. We knew we had the 13th off. That was a day built into our calendar. That was an unused snow day. So the whole week leading up to the 12th, which turned out to be our last day in session, we had been planning in case we were out. We were talking about contingency plans. And frankly, we were looking at the data and the science, knowing that we absolutely were going to have to be closed. We talked about being closed for 2 weeks originally, knowing that this week leading into the spring break would give us 3 weeks, knowing that we could be out for another week, and that would basically give us a month. And we still may need longer, but it was an excruciating decision. But it really was clear. The closer and closer we got till that March 13th off day, we knew we would have to be off the following week.
Mm-hmm. And throughout the district, there's been a lot of hard work gone in through all the teachers. I've seen even down at Campbell School how Mr. Porowski has still been posting the daily morning announcements on Twitter. So, there's a lot of motivation too, it seems, from all these teachers who are really trying to make the best of the situation, not just for their classes, but just trying to maintain some normalcy for their students who are having to deal with all this.
Yeah, that's a great comment, Eddie. You know what I've heard the most? Obviously, I have a high school age daughter, and she misses her friends in school, just like all of your listeners are missing their school and their activities and their friends. But I have to tell you, administrators and especially teachers are missing their students just as terribly. I hear that constantly. I see it on Twitter. I get emails from teachers saying how much they miss their students. So they're finding new and innovative ways to stay connected with their kids. They know it's their job and they want to do it for their children, for the students, but it's also important for us too as adults to stay connected to the people that we work with, and a lot of times those are students. So it's really important, and our teachers have taken in incredible efforts to make sure they stay connected.
And just adding on to that and connecting maybe with Josh and Sarah too, it's been difficult for the students too, really just having to adapt to this new learning process. So I'll start with you, Josh, just having to do school in a different way from home. How have you been able to succeed with it so far?
So basically, I've been allowing myself, first of all, a lot of free time, because, you can't do all work every day and stuff like that. I've also been kind of adjusting the schoolwork to my schedule a bit, so where we would usually start at 8:30, something like that, I usually start at 10, So, it gives me a bit more time to rest during the night and during the early morning. So I feel like I'm in a better mood and a better, state of, I guess, alertness to learn. What I also do is, I just clear my area of distractions. So I'll go into the basement and go into my room and just work on stuff for a few hours a day. And I make sure to get all my assignments done that are due either that day or the next day. I just make sure to get them out of the way. So for the rest of my day, I can either just relax a bit or I can get started on projects that are, coming up. Like I have two big English projects that are, the due dates are coming up soon. So what I usually do is I'll get all my schoolwork done for the day, and then I'll just chip away at those for a bit. And then I'm usually done by around, 3, 4 o'clock, like usual school days are. So, I just, with the rest of the time during the day, I'll go on a walk, get some exercise, watch TV or, take my dog to a park or something like that. So, my schedule surprisingly hasn't changed too much from what it would be, but just the way I do things, I guess, is a bit different.
Yeah, definitely some adjustments. Sarah, how about you?
I definitely have been trying, like Josh, to kind of like make sure I cut off like my work, so I'm not doing it constantly. But I do, like my whole family's here, and so like with my parents and things, like I do go out with them in the middle of the day, and like so I kind of break up my work so that while the sun is out, I can like enjoy it, and then when it's dark out, then I can like finish up whatever work I have left. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Like it's kind of like summer, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. But like it's a little bit more boring because there's not really lots to talk about with your friends other than your homework or going back to school.
Yeah. So I'd be remiss if I don't ask the same question, Mr. Caputo, because I mean, sometimes you just focus on Mr. Caputo as the superintendent, but he has a life too. So what have you been doing like outside of school during this time?
So, like you guys, we have a dog, so it's like 3 walks a day, usually right around the neighborhood, sometimes a little longer. Like today, my wife and I took Lily for a longer walk, so that's part of our day. My son, who's a sophomore at Rutgers in the business school, he's home, so that's great. I mean, I love having him home. He's usually away at school, but he needs time to do his classes online, but we try to do some exercising, some boxing, some running with him as well, which is great. My daughter, as I said, is a junior at Cranford High School, so her experience is very much like yours. She's an independent worker. Sounds like the 3 of you guys are as well. So she gets her work done. She asks me some questions when she has it. They did some Zoom classes today. They tested out their connections and getting ready for when they come back after spring break as well. And my wife is home. My wife's a dental hygienist, and she's out of work now for the first time ever. There's no work for dental hygienists right now. Offices are closed. Dental offices are closed except for emergencies. So on one hand, it's great having people around. It's great that we're healthy, but we also know that it's a very difficult situation for a lot of people. So we're doing fine, and we're making the best of it, like you guys are.
Absolutely. And something you mentioned, how your daughter also having Zoom classes. I mean, we're having Zoom classes too. I mean, something that I talked about really when we had the show 2 weeks ago is just how fortunate we are that this is happening in 2020, that our academics are able to continue during this whole period just because of all the technology that we have at our disposal.
It's a great point. We've shared devices with families who don't have them. We've shared hotspots, and we have more on order that we hope to loan out to families that don't have good, stable connections. So what we've reminded everybody is, even in a town, and even as fortunate as we are in Metuchen, there are plenty of families and plenty of our students who don't have all those luxuries, right? They may not each have their own personal device. They may not have a good, solid internet connection. There may be someone sick in their home. There may be parents that have lost jobs, which is creating extra stresses. So we're thrilled that we can continue academics, but academics is going to have to take a bit of a second seat, back seat to social and emotional well-being of everyone. And I'm thrilled to hear you guys plowing ahead with your work, and that's great. And we want to continue. Our jobs to provide education, but it's also to make sure that our families and our students are safe and emotionally well too.
Definitely, and I mean, really that connects with everything that Metuchen, not just the Board of Ed, but just as a town is doing. You've heard about like the One Metuchen initiative. I also saw, Dr. Caputo, what you tweeted out earlier today, the article about Mr. Valera and Metuchen working on making the face shields with a 3D printer. I mean, it's just amazing how these small acts of kindness are being done all around the town and really all around the country and the world to try to help people out, and people being selfless and doing acts of kindness to try to help other people out during this situation.
Yeah, I think it's important for us to share those as well. There's many, many more that I don't share or I don't even know about, right? But the ones that we do find out about, Ms. Valera is obviously a teacher at Campbell School, and she had shared that with us ahead of time, telling us there was going to be an article. The article came out today, and I shared that link to the My Central Jersey article. I'm glad you mentioned that. There's amazing people in Metuchen doing great things every day, and especially in a situation like this, it's great to highlight those folks.
So the next thing I did want to mention, and this is for Sarah, because we talked about this a couple weeks ago, is how you're a senior. So obviously, this is not how you expected high school senior year to be finishing out. So really, how have you been dealing with that at this point?
Well, I kind of just I don't think about it too much. I don't really think about like the what ifs or like what should have been, because that's really just thinking too far ahead into things I can't really control. So that's pretty much, I just haven't been thinking about it. I've been kind of my senior year so far has been like pretty typical and fun. So I'm grateful for that, because I know, like historically speaking, I'm gonna sound like such a nerd, but like the draft or whatever, like in Vietnam, like that was like in '69. So the class of 1969, they must have been pretty upset. That happened in December, and their whole senior year got cut off if they were drafted, or they were like afraid for like their families leaving. So I kind of think of it like that. Like different generations have had different things, and sometimes you're like that one class who gets caught, when you're not really expecting it. But we're just, it's something that's like part of life. It's always different. So I'm not too stressed about it, but I know I'm a senior, and all my senior friends, we have a lot of questions for you, Dr. Caputo, that they're all sending me. So if you see me looking down, that's why. So one of the top questions, like all the seniors are asking, is what's going on with spring break? Is that just like it always was? Are we doing work over spring break?
Our spring break will be like a regular spring break. There'll be no new work assigned. We have all of next week off. We have the following wraparound Monday off as well. So we'll return to school after tomorrow. We have a regular day tomorrow. And then we'll return to school on the 14th, which is the Tuesday.
Got it.
Yep, regular spring break. There should be no new work. Now, of course, some of you will have long-term assignments that your teachers have given out that don't have a due date immediately. You may still want to work on those. You may have some pleasure books that you're reading to kind of catch up on. And certainly those students in AP classes or studying for a future SAT class, I mean, you'll be busy enough anyway. And we're going to try to make the best of that. During the spring break, I'm glad you mentioned that. I had mentioned earlier those families in town. There's over 150 students who are eligible for free and reduced lunches. And we've been delivering those with our school buses to homes every day. We're going to continue that delivery. We worked out something with our food service providers. So those families, and if there's other families out there who haven't been taking advantage of that, those lunch deliveries will continue right through the spring break. We have a really supportive Board of Education. They're supportive. We just know that it's a difficult time for everybody. It's been a long stretch, and I think students and teachers could use a little break. And then we have it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be the rest of the time once we come back. So we do want people to kind of take a deep breath, like you said, take a walk, take the dog out, and do some mindfulness and some relaxation. And then April 14th, then we have another 8 weeks or so of the school year. So that's the plan.
Yeah. The really big concern for seniors is, and what I want to ask you, is what can you do to assure the class of 2020 and their families that our achievements will be recognized in a ceremony at the end of the year?
Yeah, so I just got off a call with two calls. I got one with the principals earlier, and then the OEM, the Office of Emergency Management town. We don't know exactly when the governor will clear schools to open, even if he will clear schools to open at all. That being said, Mr. Paragallo is very, very mindful of all those activities that you had mentioned earlier that don't make or break the year, but that a lot of students really, really look forward to. I don't really have an answer for you at this point. We know that that there are a lot of important events, prom and graduation and senior convocation, and I can go down the line. Those are just some of them. There's so many, many big events. As educators, right, in the education field, we bring people together. The problem with that runs head on to this social distancing where we're supposed to be apart from each other. So many of our events, whether those are games, dances, graduations, the whole idea of those is to bring people together. Problem right now is we have to do the opposite, separate people. So it's really, really tricky. I'll give you a small little example. At the next board meeting, we're supposed to be honoring the winter champions. Each season after the spring, after the fall, the winter, and the spring season, we honor at a board meeting those teams and individuals who have won championships. So again, we had a number of champions this winter, swim team and track stars, and a couple of individual GMC records set by Bridget Thomas. Normally, we'd invite them to a meeting, and we bring them up on stage, and they take pictures with the Metuchen Bulldog backdrop behind them. We have to figure out a new way to do that. Mrs. Taylor, who's my assistant, we were just texting earlier. She said, "Do you want me to go in? I can get the certificates." And so we're trying to figure out a way to best honor those students. And that's just one little piece of all the things that you're talking about. So we're very conscious of that. I don't have answers yet, though.
Following up on that is the senior class has raised a lot of money over a series of fundraisers through student council to do events like the senior trip, and it's a lot of money. And we would hate to see that go to nothing. So we were wondering if and when the pandemic dies down in New Jersey, perhaps over the summer, would we still be allowed to use those funds over the summer to kind of get back what we lost?
That's a great question. So I guess there would be a few options. We can certainly find out if, as a group, once you're not Metuchen high school students anymore, can events still be used, those funds to be used. Certainly there's usually gifts that happen with some of the money. And in some cases, it's excess money that goes back to students. So I haven't talked with Mr. Paragallo about that, but those are great points. And the next conversation we have, I have another one tomorrow with him. I'll bring those ideas up.
Yeah. Like an alumni prom, but like it would be like we would just take the money and run out somewhere separate, and we would just kind of, so the school wouldn't have to stress over the summer. And then one of my friends wants to know how your day is going.
Good. So I wake up a little later than normal, like an extra half hour or so. As I said, I've gotten a chance to take the dog for some walks in the morning. We're on either video calls or phone calls or almost all day long, just like you guys are. I do love the idea of being around my family. I don't love the idea of working remotely. I miss the students. I miss the teachers. I miss the folks that work in the central office. I miss coming to the plays and the games. So it's challenging as well. Again, we're healthy, and knock on wood, and feeling really well, and then trying to do some leadership remotely. But I also recognize every day that we have folks in the borough, the first responders, and our mayor and our police and our DPW picking up the trash, and those folks are in every single day. And in our district, we have our bus drivers and our bus aides in every day, and our maintenance and custodians keeping the buildings running and looking good. So I'm so thankful for those folks. I don't need to be in every day. Mr. Harvier, the business administrator, doesn't need to be in every day, but he often comes in. Our tech guys are in every day, helping students and families with tech needs. So we have a lot of awesome people. On one hand, I like the time and the flexibility, like Josh said before, but I do miss the people, and I do miss the routine, and I miss the events and the excitement that happen in a school district.
Do you know what the protocol is to return to school? Like, when do we say the risk level is low enough? Because it's never going to be zero. Like, the flu's never zero.
Yeah.
So when do we say it's low enough for us to go back in and resume normal activities, or will we gradually go in?
So I think the answer to that comes in like a couple different tiers. The first tier, because Governor Murphy, has closed all schools, public, private, colleges. The first thing that would have to happen is he would have to give the go-ahead to say, okay, I'm removing that order that all schools have to be closed. And then what would probably have to happen is that individual school districts, like a snow day, would have to decide if it were appropriate for their district to go back to school. And then what would happen at that point is probably districts in the county, like Middlesex County, all the superintendents would talk. Now, I'm not even sure if that second tier comes. I assume the governor will be looking at number of cases and whether the virus is still spreading and growing, or whether it's kind of peaked out and on the way down. And then he'll have to decide across the state, just because it might be decreasing in Metuchen, is it now picked up in the south area, or is Bergen County still really overwhelmed? And then he'll have to decide whether he'll allow individual districts to make decisions or not. Starting to look ahead a little bit, he's not going to make a decision, or he's not even going to address the question of closures until April 17th. So that doesn't mean on April 17th he'll decide he's going to open schools, but he hasn't even answered questions in the last couple weeks. So the next time we'll hear from the governor is April 17th. At that time, he might say, well, okay, we're going to try to open up on June 1st, or we're not going to open up at all. We're going to close for the whole year. Or I don't have an answer now. Come back in 2 weeks and I'll tell you again. So I really don't know where that's going to go.
Also, we are concerned about fourth cycle grades. Do you know if they're going to be made pass-fail or the same system as usual?
So in our principals meeting, a special principals meeting we had this afternoon at 1:30, we addressed a lot of questions about instruction, about grading at the other schools. We haven't come to some, we're not ready to share any decisions yet about the high school. There's a lot of questions that high schools face that elementary and middle schools can answer a little easier. So we're pretty solid in what we're doing at Moss and Campbell and Edgar. We know that the flexible scheduling for instruction has been working out pretty well at the high school. We know that, we have some really dedicated teachers. The one thing we haven't answered yet fully is how we're going to do grading. So we'll have more answers for you very shortly. The break comes at a good time now. We're able to finish up the third marking period and make some decisions going forth for the rest of the school year.
Yeah, and you just mentioned that with the break coming now. I mean, we're now 3 weeks into distance learning, and really, this is a perfect time just to troubleshoot any sort of issues that have come with that, and just to figure out what's going to come going forward. So the next thing I wanted to talk about, and I kind of wanted to ask Josh about this, because you alluded a couple questions ago about the winter champions and such, and I wanted to talk about sports with Josh. I talked about this a couple weeks ago. So what are sports teams doing here during the spring right now with this time that they can't really practice at all? I mean, you're on the track team, Josh. I'm just curious, what's been going on right now with track?
Yeah, our coaches are definitely not letting us off easy despite all the fears and the shutdowns. So I can only speak for the track team here, but what I know what we're doing is Holleran has gotten every athlete and every coach onto a Google Classroom. So that includes all the running coaches, Mrs. Holleran, and the throwing coaches are all in the Google Classroom, and he posts workouts, he posts, tips. Obviously, he's saying that all runs have to be done with parental consent. So if your parents say no, you can't go running. He's checking in daily with everyone, seeing how they're doing and what kind of work they're doing. So, my coach checks in with us every day to make sure, we're getting at least a bit of physical activity or we're working out a bit. And then every Sunday, Mr. Holleran checks in with both the runners and the throwers to see, what's going on, and all the coaches get on those calls. So everyone really just starts, talking about their week, plans going forward, future workout ideas and stuff like that. So, even though we've lost the ability to compete, our coaches still expect us to keep practicing and staying in good shape. And a lot of it, and I can speak that the majority of athletes are doing a good job with keeping up with the workouts, and the coaches are doing a good job on keeping on the athletes and encouraging them and making sure they're doing what they have to do.
Mm-hmm.
Josh, I noticed you said that your coach touches base with you a lot, and I think that's fantastic. Which reminds me of a suggestion that one of my friends sent in. Dr. Caputo, it's really hard sometimes to approach your teachers about things that may or may not be working well digitally, because the tone can come off disrespectful when it's just text. Do you think you could kind of tweet something out or send a message to teachers? Why don't you guys send like a survey out just for feedback, so it's anonymous? And so, something's not working, if they're giving too much work, if they're maybe not scaling the work to like how different life is now, or if a program's like glitching too much, that would be awesome, because then it's like a more respectful path, and more organized than everyone just kind of complaining to them over email.
Good idea, Sarah. I hope I'm a good role model in some cases. In this case, I have a student advisory board made up of students from grades 3 to 12, and there are 2 seniors, 2 juniors, a freshman and sophomore from high school. So I've asked those students, and I've gotten, of the 12 students on the board, I think I've already gotten 6, like Google Docs or long emails with feedback. Now, I know it's not a perfect sample, but they give me their feedback, and they talk to their friends and people they talk to. So we've gotten a lot of feedback. One of the consistent pieces at the high school is something that you just mentioned, is just about they really have appreciated kind of like that exit ticket idea, like after a session, and teachers really asking what's working, what's not working. So I know we have some teachers doing that. I think it's a great idea. I will certainly encourage our teachers to do that, and in my conversation with Mr. Paragallo tomorrow, I'll mention that to him as well. What's working, what's not working. Another thing we hear is that teachers, and these are well-meaning teachers, sometimes may misjudge the amount of homework, right? And so we have some teachers that might be giving out an assignment that with, 45 minutes a day for 5 days, plus some time at lunch and time at home, it's not much. But when you're all at home making your own schedule, that time frame can really get condensed. I saw some people on Twitter talking about giving suggestions, the teacher suggestions, saying that, hey, what you plan to do in one period, plan that over 3 periods in a remote setting, because it's very different, and not all students can get on the device at the time. Maybe they have younger siblings, or maybe they have parents that need the device, or like I said before, maybe people are sick or people have lost jobs and they're trying to balance things. So I really appreciate that. I think it's a great idea. I've learned so much from the students, Campbell and Edgar, and the ones I mentioned from the high school, giving me feedback, and I've shared that forward with the principals as well. Great idea, Sarah.
Definitely. So that's going to just about wrap up today's program. Dr. Caputo, definitely a lot of work going in throughout the Board of Ed and the entire Metuchen School District to try to maintain normalcy here and try to put in and make a maximum school experience in the distance learning end. So best of luck with what's to come.
Be healthy and stay safe, everybody. I'm happy to join you again, Eddie. I love getting the word out. I love taking questions like the one Sarah had for me. Didn't have all the answers, but I'm happy to take the questions and do my best to kind of move us forward.
Much appreciated. So for Sarah Terracina, Josh Hyman, I'm Eddie Kalegi. We'll see you next time. This is the Metuchen High School Podcast, the online radio voice of MHS. We hope you have a great spring break.